All right, welcome everyone to the December 4th Board of Supervisors meeting. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and tonight we're starting out with some special acknowledgements. And we're first going to start by acknowledging a Girl Scout project. The Board of Supervisors and residents of Tredyffrin Township would like to acknowledge Natalie Guerin, who built and installed a lending library at Friendship Park for her Silver Scout Award project. I don't think Natalie's here tonight. Yeah, but thank you so much to her. We also have some thank yous for our 2023 sponsors, and Mr. Duraco is going to help by handing out to anyone in attendance. Tredyffrin Township would like to acknowledge the sponsors for our 2023 events. Without support such as theirs, our special events might not be possible. As your name is called, please come forward. For our gold sponsors, Stephen Barnett from C&E Bank. Our other gold sponsors were Mainline Dermatology and Metropolitan Veterinary Associates, and I think they are not here tonight. Next, we have our silver sponsors, Patrick McKenna from Gotham Greenwood. Heidi Masterson from Penn Medicine, who maybe is not here tonight. And our other silver sponsors were Ivy Rehab Wayne and Rubenstein Partners. And next we have our bronze sponsors, Brittany Sanseverino from Pico. And our other bronze sponsors were U.S. Bank and Unruh Turner Burke and Freeze. And then we have our business sponsors, Suzanne Lockhart from Brown and Caldwell. And our other business sponsors were Anu Catering, Berwyn Bistro, Nancy LaCointe Realtor, Our Deli, Paoli Hardware Center, Santucci Square Pizza, Spenga, Spot Stevens and McCoy, and Village Wellness. Please support these businesses who continue to support the township activities. So thank you again to all of our 2023 sponsors. All right, now we will move to our first public hearing, and I call to order the public hearing for HR 475. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. I've marked the following board exhibits for the hearing this evening. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice of the hearing in the Daily Local News from November 17th, 2023. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the hearing notice from the Mainline Times Suburban, dated November 19th, 2023. Board Exhibit 3 is a copy of the email and distribution list to those who wish to receive public hearing notifications from the Township, dated November 14th, 2023. And Board Exhibit 4 is a copy of the ordinance itself. And those are the board exhibit hearings for HR 475.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt HR 475?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Do we have any board comments or questions? All right. Do we have any public comments or questions? Please come on up, state your name and your address in the microphone.
Come over to this microphone here. My name is Aaron Abel, and
My address is 101 Green Street, Malvern, PA. But I am here as a representative from Able Brothers Towing, an authorized service provider for the Township, Tredyffrin. I just would like the board to consider 2 points that were made in this document. One specifically being the waive of the daily storage rate if a vehicle is picked up the same day. My only feedback for that would be that when a vehicle enters our property, we're responsible for the care and custody, of the condition of that vehicle. That responsibility, that liability, comes at a cost, as a fee there. And then the follow-up statement would be the secondary tow from the police facility to our facility, free of charge. I think, at least to my knowledge, it feels unprecedented for any private business to be expected to provide goods or services free of charge. I wouldn't be able to send a driver without paying proper salary and wages or spending other costs such as diesel fuel and other, sunk costs. So.
I think actually we removed both of the provisions in the draft that you actually were just mentioning. So I think that if my memory serves correct, Chief, I think I may have brought up those comments that you just made, and those provisions were actually removed from the ordinance. So.
Thank you, yeah.
All right, thank you so much for coming out, and I'm glad that was cleared up. Do we have any other comments from the public? Please come on up, same mic, and state your name and address.
I know the free of charge one with the police was removed. So there is still a provision that if there will be no storage cost if a towed vehicle is retrieved on the same business day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. But there was additional language in there that we actually did remove related to one of the comments that were just made. So I think that's the part that I'm referring to. That never changed. I think that's actually the way it was before too, wasn't it? I don't know if you recall, Chief. I'd have to double check.
Good evening.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Deborah Abel. I'm also representing Able Brothers Towing and Automotive. That was my son, who I wasn't aware was going to jump up and speak before me. But, since he covered the questions that I had as far as the ordinance is concerned, my question would be, can somebody enlighten me as to what brought this ordinance into effect? Only because we have never, to my knowledge, had any complaints of any services or fees, or just curious, is there a problem that can be acknowledged?
Thank you. Chief Beatty, do you want to?
There were some complaints that were brought to us. We addressed them with the providers, but we realized the ordinance hadn't been touched in many years, and there was a lot of loopholes in it. And that's why we went back with the solicitor to draft and update the ordinance and make it more effective for this time.
So there were complaints with multiple providers? It's a systemic problem?
No, I didn't say that.
Okay.
There was some complaints, and we handled those complaints, and we dealt with the individual complaints. But when we reviewed the practice, the ordinance, we found holes that we needed to address.
Okay, and the items that were removed from the ordinance were removed?
So we added a lot more to it than what's currently there. So
Okay.
particularly with the definition section. So there really was not anything that is there now. So we brought it up to current standards to be consistent with state standards as well. But I think to the comment that was made before, I want to make sure I get it right. And it was posted to the township, and I apologize. It went through several revisions, so that's why I don't recall what was removed and what wasn't. There is a provision that is there will be no storage cost if a towed vehicle is retrieved on the same business day between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. And then if a police officer requests a vehicle be towed to the department for investigation, same towing company is contacted to transport the vehicle, but the tow company not to charge for 2 tows related to that scenario. The provision that I think was mentioned earlier about free tows, actually I think was in there before when that was removed. So that's what I was referring to.
Okay, so,
Like free tows for the police department, that section came out.
okay, the updated version is on your website, I assume?
That's correct. It was included for tonight's material, and it's probably been there for the last month because we discussed it at the last board meeting as well, so it hasn't changed since then.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other citizen questions or comments about this ordinance? All right, hearing none, this one is a roll call vote. Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And I'm going to close this public hearing. And I will call to order the next public hearing for HR 476. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Dr. Gussie. I have marked the following board exhibits for this hearing. Board Exhibit 1 is the proof of publication of the notice of the hearing in the Daily Local News from November 17th, 2023. Board Exhibit 2 is the proof of publication of the hearing notice in the Mainline Times Suburban dated November 19th, 2023. Board Exhibit 3 is a copy of the email and distribution list to those who wish to receive public hearing notifications of the Township sent on November 14th, 2023. Board Exhibit 4 is a copy of the ordinance itself, and Board Exhibit 5 is a copy of the lease agreement that is attached to the ordinance as Exhibit A. Those are the board exhibits for this hearing.
Thank you. Do we have a motion to adopt HR 476?
So moved.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments or questions? Any public comments or questions? All right, and none. Okay, come on over to this one. State your name and address.
My name is Dory Hoxley. I live at 560 Winston Way in Berwyn. I want to make sure I'm addressing the right issue. Does this have to do with anything with the playing fields at Tea Garden Park?
Yes, that's correct. It's the lease of the fields to the Little League.
Okay. Well, I have two issues. One is our property backs up to Tea Garden Park, and we have had no problem with any of the teams that have played there for many years. But recently, I think it was a girls' softball team decided they had to have music with the games on Sunday morning. So as early as 9 o'clock on Sunday, we were listening to boombox music accompanying the game, which has never happened before. So that was one issue that we had. And also the other issue was that I think Devon Stratford was subleasing their field to a rugby team. And it was the Conestoga rugby team. They were initially playing games at Tea Garden, which were raucous, wouldn't even begin to describe it. But then they just began having practices, rugby practices at Tea Garden, which are also very loud, and they would go from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock every night, and they were, if you were trying to have dinner or just have a quiet, peaceful night, it was impossible. So those are the two issues, the music and the rugby practices. If they could be scheduled to be at Conestoga High School, that would solve the problem. I don't know if that's possible. And also interferes with all the people that use Tea Garden Park to just walk their dogs or anything. You suddenly have this invasion of all these players that from 5 to 7 every night are taking up the whole thing. So, I don't know if you can do anything about that, but that's the problem.
Thank you. Can someone comment on whether those are addressed at all in the lease? Those particular, because this is with Devon Stratford
Right,
specifically, right?
Correct. This is just for the Little League usage of the fields, which they've been doing, I believe, for some time, Joe. This is just a renewal to use less of the fields. They had been renting out more, but I don't think there's a need for as many this time.
Have you reached out to the softball league to ask them to cease the boombox?
I did ask them. The music, I think, has been dealt with. The other thing is that it's Sunday morning. They start to play these games at 9 o'clock on a Sunday morning. And even if they don't have music, girls, unlike boys, make a lot of noise cheering for each other, which I don't have any problem with. I went to those games, but at 9 o'clock on Sunday morning, it can be an issue. They could play all day Saturday, they could play all Sunday afternoon. But for those of us that live there, it's a pretty big disturbance. So that's,
I think we can definitely take your concerns to the Parks and Rec Board, let them know about it, and perhaps take it from there, if that would help. And we can always have the police department check in on things, but we definitely appreciate you bringing this to our notice, because it's the first time I've
and you
heard
can
of it.
deal with the rugby team issue as well?
Well, we can certainly bring it up to the Parks and Rec Board. We'll let them know about your concerns, maybe reach out to the original lessor of the property, because you said that was a sublease, right?
Yeah, because it's not, I would think they could have rugby practice at any other place but in somebody's backyard. Anyway, thank you. I appreciate it.
I do have a question. I don't know if anyone knows, not for you actually, but does Devon Stratford or any baseball or softball league have the ability to sublease under the lease?
So they can use their field, but I'm not sure. We have a lot of agreements with the school district. If it's a school team, then it's something that Conestoga has worked out with the Parks Board and the staff about using those facilities. It's not Devon Stratford making those. I'd have to look at what they've been doing and how they've been operating. I don't have that in front of me. I don't know if Darren or Joe know more about that.
No, I mean, we like all of our other fields and parks, people can rent them, rented fields. So that most likely is what that is. But same, both softball and
I want to follow up on
rugby.
what Supervisor Freed said. It's a question of the time. If they are subletting, I can't believe that we would have permitted them to
They use
sublet
the
or
baseball field,
assign.
so no, we probably
No,
won't.
it's a
not
baseball
sublease.
field, so probably not. So it's probably, I don't think it's DSLL there. And then it's, as Bill said, just maybe we check it out, what's going on. Or if
Yeah, I mean, you have to talk to we'll talk to the Parks Board. I mean, again, it's used as a facilities. It's a facility that if the school district team is using it, they need the space, but
I'll follow up with also our Parks and Rec coordinator, who will know about field usage. But again, if they're operating within the allowed times under our ordinance, other than the noise complaint, there's really not much we can do other than talk to them and ask if it's a noise issue to try to help out.
To answer Supervisor Freed's question, there's nothing in the lease that specifically addresses sublease, but they are limited on how they may use the field specifically to recreational baseball and softball. So I certainly don't think that subleasing is contemplated by the lease agreement that we have.
All right. Any other questions about this lease? All right, we will move to the vote, and separately we'll follow up to try to address your issues, but I don't think this lease affects it. All right, this is another roll call vote. Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki. Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And I close the public hearing. Thank you. And we will move on to announcements for tonight. There is an open position on the Planning Commission. If you're interested in volunteering, please send a letter of interest and a brief resume to tredyffrin@tredyffrin.org. Township offices will close at 1:30 p.m. on Tuesday, December 9th for a staff appreciation luncheon. Now, what did I say? 19th. I'm sorry. We move to the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of November 13th, 2023 public meeting?
So moved.
And do we have a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Prior to this meeting, the board met in executive session to discuss legal and real estate matters. All right, next we have a motion to appoint Art Stewart as an alternate member of the Zoning Hearing Board. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board comments?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to say that normally the nomination would come from Supervisor Miller, who's not here. But I actually met Art Stewart when I was out knocking on doors, and he certainly, he's lived here for a large part of his life. He was born and brought up here and has deep roots and would like to engage in public service, and this is an opportunity for him he said it's an opportunity to engage in public service. So I'm happy to support his application to be an alternate on the zoning hearing board.
Thank you. Any other board comments? Any public comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we will move to the bond presentation. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually going to introduce Ed Murray with Stiefel, who will be underwriting our bonds here. So with that, I'll let Ed come up and go through the presentation.
Joe, thank you very much. This presentation has approximately 13 pages in it. I'm not going to go through all 13 pages. I'll answer any questions that you might have as we go through the process. As you might notice, my name is Ed Murray. We really thank you for being here. Stiefel is the largest municipal underwriter in the country, so we're really excited to be here. I've worked with your former investment banker, Michael Wolf, for 30 years until his well-deserved retirement after 44 years of attending night meetings. He's pleasantly decided that I should keep doing that and he should be retired. But I really thank you for being here and for the opportunity. We started talking to staff and Mr. Del Rocco, I guess, in March about different scenarios, how this might play out, what the project list would be. You did further honing on the project lists. So this presentation is an assumption that the project list has been determined. It includes several streets and roads and bridge work as all in the resolution. So with that, I'll just kind of get into it real quickly. Forward. Forward. There you go. So very quickly, your issue, it's very common for municipalities to do general obligation bond issues and have several purposes. Just so that you recall, in 2019, that project had a number of different purposes, including 2 bridges, a park, I think renovations to Wilson Park and some others. So it's very familiar. When we do this, we ask for a project list. Mr. Director gave that to us. We're trying to match the longevity or the average useful life of the projects to be longer than the life of the bonds. So Joe really got us a good list and we got through it. We're proposing that the township issues up to $10 million in project bonds. And we have a breakdown of the sources and uses later in the presentation. But we want them to be bank qualified because if we stay to $10 million or lower, the township gets a lower interest rate on those bonds because they have special designations and they receive favorable tax treatment from banks. And we want that. There's additional buyers, and whenever we have additional buyers for the bonds, we get a lower interest rate. The other thing that we want to make sure that we get all less than 10 million bank qualified issues will get a 5-year call provision, meaning the township will have the right to call the bonds or redeem the bonds, no different than refunding your home mortgage. If interest rates are lower in 5 years, we'll be able to refund these. The township has a very rich history of refunding its bonds in 2012 and 2011 and 2004. All the bonds have been outstanding, have been refunded at least once or twice on behalf of the township. So we're very efficient. When we can refund the bonds, we really do. So we're looking forward to that. So with that. This is the new money analysis for what we're looking at. We're assuming that we close the bond issue on 2/1. Between now and then, we have a number of different tasks that we have to do. We've been working with your solicitor on the resolution, as well as with bond counsel. We've put together an investor document, a preliminary official statement. We've begun circulating that to the different parties for their review. Later on next week, we'll have a rating call with Moody's, with Township, with Township staff, and we'll go through the rating process. We'll get that rating process back. We'll get the formal rating back the first week in January, and we would be in a position to sell the bonds second week in January, I think the 15th, as early as the 15th. So we're anticipating that we'll stay right under $10 million, and the project fund the township will receive back will be $9,701,115 approximately. During the time that you'll have the money in the project fund, you'll be able to reinvest those monies, and we would anticipate that you would earn back the cost of issuing the bonds with the money that you earned with the proceeds that you'll have on hand. So you'll actually pay off your cost of issuance with your interest earnings. On page 11, this is what we would anticipate the structure of the bonds to be. There's two charts here. One on the left is the aggregate debt service that the township has. You can see the gray there is the series of 2019. That's the only series remaining that the township has outstanding. The 2012s, the 2011s, all other bonds have been defeased. The only bonds outstanding right now are the 2019s, and they were new project bonds when they were issued, again, for two bridges, as I recall. What was the project? Yeah, Dummers Bridge, Howville, Administration Building, and Wilson Farm Park were the project funds for that, for 2019. So, but the 2019 bonds, as you see them there, the green bar that you see there would be our anticipated debt service for the new bonds. So what we're showing you here is the old bonds and then the new bonds in totality. And if you look at the aggregate net debt service, ultimately what we've done here is we've leveled it off so that all four projects basically net out to be the same debt service per year for all projects. So again, right above that $1 million number per year out to 2049. That's really the structure. The last page is just a detailed debt service schedule, what we'd anticipate that debt service to be. But we won't sell the bonds until January 15th, so we don't know this for sure. So this is our estimate as of right now. The only other thing of notice here that I've put in here, this is a historical graph of the bond buyer index. This is kind of our Dow Jones Industrial. This is kind of what, if you're issuing bonds in the municipal marketplace, this is kind of what we track every day. And if you kind of give this a look over the last 30 years, except for the real anomalous period that was 2021 and 2022, the COVID period there, interest rates are still very, very low over the last 30 years. I think there was only a brief point in 2015 where interest rates were lower than they still are today. They had been higher if we get down to just the last month or so. Interest rates were higher. The 10-year Treasury was right around 5%, and today it was at a 4.30. It's kind of inside baseball, but the municipal bond index had the best year or the best month in November. So we entered November, I think 60 basis points higher than we left November. And that was the best showing that we had seen since 1982. So interest rates are trending better. It looks like the Federal Reserve wants to stop increasing interest rates here. So we think your timing is going to be excellent in January. I said a whole bunch really quickly, and I apologize for that. If you have any questions whatsoever regarding the structure of what we anticipate the bonds to be, our financing timeline, how we structure it, the different tasks that we have to do with the administration to get the bonds out to sale to the public, anything regarding...
So this is a dumb question, but why are the slides labeled private and confidential when this is a public meeting?
Oh, I think we always put that on there as a matter of broker-dealer and compliance. We asked it to be private and confidential, but once it's made in public and once it's on your website, it's not. If I could explain to you what my legal and compliance office does on a daily basis and what they make me do, it would be a long day.
Incredibly important stuff, I want to tell you as a person that works in legal and compliance.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other board questions or comments?
Yeah, I do. And I don't know if it's for you, Ed, or Joe, or both. And I know that we can mix projects, bring projects in and out, and do all that. And I've seen it here, and maybe I should remember what it was, but and I know we have a list of projects. Can I just hear it? And maybe the folks out there would like to hear it?
Yeah, so...
I know they can change, by the way.
Yeah, we always give a general level of detail when we're writing the bond purchase agreement as well as the official statement. That has generally, again, you need to tell people what you're using the money for, but we do bake in some, hey, in case you come in under budget on projects or you get additional grant funding you weren't expecting, you can therefore move the money into another project. But the projects we have slated for this bond money will be $3.15 million anticipated for the firehouse at 23 Bridge Avenue. We have a little under $1.6 million for Glen Hardy Road Bridge. We have most of it, a little over $4 million in stormwater projects. So Steve has a project on Bear Road that we have money for, Woodcrest, Willis, and Upper Wheatley. And we have some money for the West Valley Road and Jeffrey Lane. We have a fairly large infrastructure project going on there. And then we have money in the bonds under $1 million for the roofs and in our public works garages. So those are the 6 projects that we plan on spending the money on.
Thanks, Joe.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Come on up.
Ann Murphy, 5 Berkshire Terrace. I was just remembering that slide where you had the sources and uses, and I was wondering if you could tell us what the imputed interest rate is with the original issue discount and whatever else you have in there.
So we haven't sold the bonds as of yet, but right now we're anticipating the interest rate somewhere to be, you told me this. So each year it has a different interest rate, but they range from 425 to 470. I would say an average interest rate is somewhere around 4.55.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the public? All right, hearing none. We will move to a related motion. So thank you so much for coming and giving this presentation.
Thank you.
Our next motion is to adopt Resolution 2023-25 to authorize proceeding with pursuing bond financing for capital projects, authorizing publication of a pre-enactment notice, repealing all inconsistent resolutions or parts thereof, providing an effective date. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This was a resolution that Patrick and I worked on with bond counsel, and it just allows us and gives us authorization to take the necessary steps to issuing the bonds.
All right, thank you. Do we have any questions about this resolution? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Do we have a second? I'll second it. Do we have any board comments?
I do have some comments and questions. Joe, what is the reserve percentage in the township that we'll have compared against the 2024 budget for next year?
I want to say it was I would say between 65 and 75% if I had off the top of my head.
Okay, so what does that end up being?
In terms of dollars?
Yes.
We're looking, I would say it would range, I would say in the $18 million range, again, off the top of my head.
Okay. The fire building was originally going to be coming out of reserves, is that correct?
Correct.
And why the change?
Because we're taking on a bigger financial role in that building. We're going to be owning that building with Easttown, and so our required contribution increased.
By how much? It's not that much.
So gross, it's going to be, I believe, I want to say in the $4.9 million range before any change orders or any other issues that we might run into. And then we'll get Berwyn Fire Company secured a RACP grant, so we'll get some of that money back well after the project's completed.
All right, so 70%, but we're only, in the agreement that's coming later, we're only agreeing to, what, 3.25 right now? In the fireman's agreement, what is, right?
We're agreeing to, that's our, I think that's supposed to be our net contribution is what we expect it to be.
Okay.
But,
4.9 million.
yeah, that's gross. And then
Gross,
once-
until we get the payback. Okay, so we're doing that, okay. $4 million for bonds related to stormwater matters. Now, we're doing our stormwater fund starting next year, when money's going to start coming in. It's going to come in year and year after that, and these projects are going to be occurring over the next 1 to 5 years, right? We have to do the projects within 5 years, or?
Yeah, so the two of the three projects, Bear Road and Woodcrest, Willis, Upper Wheatley, we have grant funding identified for it. We also have some of our ARPA money designated for these. So these are projects that the board's already approved, and we're engineering and designing, and so these are funding gaps that needed to be filled. And then the last project is a fairly large infrastructure project that runs between West Valley Road and Jeffrey Lane. That again, we don't have the money in that fund available right now.
Right.
And then,
In that fund, but I mean, I support all the projects. The projects are good. We need to get them done. It's where should the money be coming from? And have we looked at all the options? And if we, again, these projects are going to be over a course of period of time. It seems to me that if the money comes out of just reserves over that period of 4 or 5 times with the interest rate that are going up, did you guys do the hard numbers and analysis to determine whether or not we could be using our reserves? And even if we did the full 9.7 million, which I'm not suggesting we should, I mean, that would still leave us with, you said, about $9 million in our reserves, which is still 35% against the total township budget, which is still an extraordinary position for any township. So did you guys look hard at whether or not we should be using reserves before we spend $8.7 million in interest over the next 25 years to get $9.7 million right now?
So one of the exercises I looked at was, I looked at our 5-year capital plan, and as it stands right now, a lot of the reserves in the general fund will be going to fund our other capital purchases. So all of our vehicles and equipment. There's other projects that are outlined in the capital plan that we'll be funding with those reserves. And so we looked at that, and we're instead of using it in a large chunk here, it's being used elsewhere over that next 5.
Now, wait, we're talking millions and millions of dollars. How much of our capital reserves, and I know what's going to be going towards, we're budgeting for operations in 2024 is about $1 million or something like that. In which in 2023, in case the public doesn't know, it looks like we're not going to have to be using reserves to plug any 2023 gap, which is great. But I don't recall us using a lot of capital reserves for capital projects, but please let.
So in the 2024 budget for operations, we have just under $700,000 in there. In general fund reserves for next year, we have $1.9 million budgeted for capital purchases. We also have money that will be transferring from the general fund to the emergency services fund to cover the purchase of an engine, as well as a funding part of the construction for 23 Bridge Ave will be paid for in cash. And then any of the change orders and additional costs that will incur as part of that project will come out of those reserves as well.
But there'll be some reimbursements there, and you said at the beginning that it's anticipated that, again, for purposes of reserves versus the budget, it'll be 65 to 70% despite all those issues. Or are you saying that you did not include those items in that original assessment?
Correct. That when we're looking at it, we're looking at current levels as of a certain date versus what the budget is, not what we anticipate it to be in 5 years based off of.
All right, let's start with what would you anticipate it in 1 year?
1 year, I would anticipate to use a few $1 million next year between operations and capital. So that could be down. Again, it depends on, it's going to be largely dependent on how we do in our general fund operating budget. But again, we have just in general fund capital, we have 1.9 million right there that I know of. Again, there's another, call it 2 million that we're going to use up front to fund 23 Bridge Avenue. And then it just, again, that the next couple of years, vehicles and equipment alone in the general fund, $1,025,000. This is right now, another $500,000 in 26, $400,000 in 27, another $500,000 in 28. And that's just vehicles and equipment. I haven't looked at projects. We're looking at.
Well, I think you answered my question, is that the number is going to go up and down. We're still in an extraordinarily healthy fiscal situation in terms of reserves versus the anticipated budgeting that we've done for 2024. And I'm not sure it's worth it to the taxpayer for us to pay the $8.7 million over the course of this bond to receive the $9.7 million for the projects as outlined, when I think perhaps through some other budgeting techniques through reserves, perhaps we can get the result we want. Perhaps. I would also argue there's much better sources of revenue to pay for these projects, of course, and that's going to be my pet bugaboo, and the earned income tax could solve a lot of these things at just a 0.5% of income could bring in, according to our study, conservatively speaking, $8.3 million a year, where we could plug the gap in our capital budgets. We can take care of these items as they come along. We could take care of the fire, and we can take care of the stormwater issues, not have to create these separate funds, and we'd broaden our tax base. So I'm unconvinced that this is the best source of revenue for worthy projects that I would like to get done. So I'm going to have to pass on moving forward on this bond at this time.
I would just add real quick, so the board knows, the ramifications of that would be that the general fund would need to come up with essentially $4.2 million within the next couple of years for stormwater projects. Because the way I developed the tax rate for the stormwater program was based off of, the assumption of a bond issuance to help manage the cash flow for the first couple of years, the 5 years, and then with the way the way I worked out the cash flow, that we shouldn't need bond money for future capital projects for stormwater. There'll be enough money in the capital reserve within that fund to fund everything that needs to do.
But why can't we just use our reserves for that purpose?
You could, but when you were asking, so that's 18 million, call it right now, you're down to 14 million, plus I have another 4.5 million in projects, I think, that we have slated, so now we're down, we're gonna be going through those reserves pretty quickly within the next 5 years.
Madam Chair, I have a question. So, based on the presentation, and it's fair to say interest rates are exceedingly high right now?
Compared to 2019 when we issued bonds, yeah, they're double, but I would say historically speaking, I think they're right where you would want them to be.
But they may be, you would expect them to come down in the next 5, 6, 7 years?
I would hope so, and if that happens, we have the opportunity to refinance.
Well, that's my question, which is when can these bonds be called?
After 5 years.
Okay, so there's a lot of discussion about 25 years. In fact, as interest rates come down, they can be, for lack of a better term, refinanced.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
So from my point of view, interest rates are probably the future interest rates are probably the greatest uncertainty that we have, because I've seen cases where we've had any number of well-known prognosticators in the industry who sort of predict where interest rates are going to be in 6 months and 12 months, and then about half of them are right and half of them are wrong, which tells me that the rates are probably going to be random. But the question I have is, is this the right time to be doing it? Because let's say the money comes in on February 1st. We're not going to be ready to write checks on February 1st. So should we wait till, let's say 6 months, I'm just picking a number out of thin air right now, when we'll be in a better position to actually have projects where we're getting ready to write checks? And certainly we can write checks out of reserves and then use bonds to sort of backfill that. But is this the right time to be getting this amount of money in our bank account?
My only advice there would be, I generally would personally not advise the board to try to time the market, so to speak. I think we would defer to Ed as to the timing and if and when we think this is a good time. That's part of the reason why, theoretically, we were on track to try to issue some bonds at the end of this year, but with the interest rates and the timing this year, we know the end of the year is, generally speaking, not a good time to issue bonds, so you wait until the new calendar, but that would be my only advice.
Yeah, and just as far as trying to anticipate, and I do agree that
it's a fool's game. But you and I have discussed this a little bit, and although the general indications are the Fed may not be raising interest rates, there doesn't seem to be any indication they're going to be lowering interest rates in the near future.
I mean, Ed can probably speak to that better than I can.
Interest rates are currently lower today, or the current rate of interest is lower today than they have been 75% of the time over the last 30 years, right? Except for the small period, 19, 20, and 21, almost all the time in the last 30 years, interest rates are higher than they are today. They've come up from zero, but they're not high on a historical basis. If you go all the way back to 94, that would be one thing. So interest rates are not, they're double what they were in 2019, but they're historically very attractive. Number two, two things have happened over the period of November. Interest rates have come down about 60 basis points. At the beginning of November, the people that actually bid on the federal funds futures, there was a 10% chance that there would be a March 2024 rate cut. As of today, that's at 90%. So they've already...
9 or 90?
90. So they've already, the marketplace has already priced in, rightly or wrongly, but you will be getting interest rates that already have some assumption that one rate hike will already happen in March. They're already predicting 4 for next year. Rightly or wrongly, people are putting real money down and betting on future of interest rates in the federal funds futures market. They're already betting on 4 of those. So again, reductions. So they're already counting on at least 4 reductions. So if those expectations don't happen, interest rates will come back up. So as to, is this a good time? My answer is, I don't ever know the future, but we've come a long way in a short period, and I would say yes. As to the point of the right time, the other thing that is interesting is we used to tell you that you'd want to wait until you had everything bid and ready to go to take the money down because you were borrowing at, let's say, 3%, and you were investing at like 25 basis points. Now the opposite has occurred. Right? Now you can get short-term interest rates are higher than the long-term interest rates. You know, you can get a 90-day treasury right now at 5%. Right? So you're going to be investing the money. So let's say you're not ready to go with bids on February 1st. You'll be investing the $9.7 million and you'll be earning money. And I can guarantee, well, I can't guarantee you, you should be earning interest at least up to the bond yield. So it's really no cost to you. So I would advise that you take advantage of the low interest rates, the 60 basis point move down, incur the money. The last point I did want to address regarding interest rates, if you are using the money for this and you are anticipating additional funds from the stormwater sewer fee when it comes in, these bonds are callable in 5 years. Meaning if in 5 years you want to dedicate all the money that you have or the $4 million that was for these projects for the sewer, you can defease the bonds with cash in 5 years' time. You can defease the bonds and identify them in 3 years. I can put them into a fund and advance refund a portion of them in a 3-year time period if the money shows up and if it's timely and if it matches your expectations. You wouldn't have to pay the bonds out 25 years if you wanted to dedicate a specific revenue to pay off those bonds. I think I got all 3 things. Okay, thank you.
I have a dumb question, and please excuse me, I'm not a finance guy, I'm an engineer. And that is that if you're saying that you can get the money from the bonds, so basically there's a trade-off between interest rate and risk. And if you say that we can get the bonds and put the money in, let's say, you know, some sort of investment and make more than we're getting on the bonds, where is the risk arbitrage going with that?
So we can't earn more than what we're paying, and so we generally use Pliget I take the proceeds and I open up a new Pliget account. And what they do, one of the good things that Pliget does for us is they watch the money. And so they essentially make sure that we're not allowed to have arbitrage as part of issuing tax exempt bonds. And so they make sure we earn as much as we can on the interest and adjust it accordingly.
Any other board questions or comments? Any public questions or comments?
Hi, good evening. Eamon Brazunas, Deputy Chief of Berwyn Fire Company. Just to piggyback on something that Finance Director and Assistant Manager Duraco cited, the RACP grant that we received from the state, that'll be total $2 million. So as he rightly pointed out, we won't receive that money automatically. It's a reimbursement grant. So typically, based on my experience, we're looking at a year on the high end to get that money back. What we tried to do is set this up to have good communication with the Chester County Economic Development Council, as well as our local elected officials, dotting our I's, crossing our T's to make sure we get that money faster. So the goal is to see that within 6 to 8 months, not a year. That's our commitment, obviously, to the Tredyffrin folks, as well as the Easttown group as well, working as a team here to get this done. The second component, and right now we're trying to see what happens with the federal budget. There's a $1.4 million grant that's out there through Congresswoman Houlihan's office. So we will hopefully have some clarity on that as the feds hopefully get their budget approved, and we'll have some answers to that in the first quarter of 2024. But obviously that will help with the overall pictures. We're looking at all the financing decisions you all have to make. The third piece, which we haven't necessarily factored into this yet, we have a construction savings account established with the State Fire Commissioner's Office. That's going to generate at least another $50,000 towards the construction costs. So that will go in towards a lot of what's being talked about tonight. This doesn't include any additional donations or other grant funding that we might receive over the coming months to help with the total cost of the project. So just want to provide a little bit of clarity just for the board, and thank you to Joe for mentioning that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the public? All right, we will move on to the vote for Resolution 2023-25. This one's a roll call vote. Supervisor Holt.
I think the comments, of course, by Seifel and the bond salesman were very good and very persuasive, but he's selling bonds. And no matter what, there is going to be a cost to the selling of these bonds. It's going to be $170,000. I think we could be looking at other sources of revenue to fund these needed projects, and I think we could have done a better job looking into those. For those reasons, and again, I think it'll all work out. It's very encouraging, your comments about we'll be able to get the interest in the money market funding, being able to do what we can there to save some pennies. But I would have liked for us to look at other sources first. So I vote no.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
I'm going to vote aye, but it's a rather reluctant aye because I'm not necessarily convinced that this is the right time or the right approach, but I think that at some point you have to make a decision, so I'm going to vote aye.
All right, and I vote aye as well. Motion carries. Next, we move to the motion to authorize staff to advertise a public hearing on December 18th, 2023 to consider and possibly adopt H.R. 479 pursuant to the local government
Sorry, apologies. Mr. Martin was asking me a question about the motion. Apologies.
Okay, this is still on here. Okay, I thought maybe it had been removed and not on mine. Pursuant to the Local Government Unit Debt Act, authorizing the incurrence of non-electoral debt through the issuance of general obligation bonds on a tax-exempt basis in a maximum amount up to $15 million for the purpose of providing funds to repair a bridge in the township, other capital projects in the township, including the township building and stormwater system, and to pay the costs and expenses of issuing the bond. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. This ordinance was drafted by bond counsel, reviewed by myself and Mr. McKenna. And so this is the authorization for the public hearing, again, to issue the bonds. Mr. Murray is happy to explain. I know there'll probably be some questions as to why it's 15 million, if the board has any. Thank you.
I have that question.
Can I just make one quick clarification for the sake of the motion? Because that's what Mr. Martin was asking. When it says capital projects in the townships, including the township building, that's actually, it should have read including township buildings, so not specific to the township. So I do want to clarify that one.
Some public works stuff, right? More than.
And we're issuing bonds for the fire, and so that
Well, of course, yeah,
we'll be
we
talking
know
about that
about
later,
that.
so that's what it's referring to.
Yes, but it's.
All right, let's start with a motion. Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? I will second it. All right, now we can move to the question. Supervisor Wasaki.
He's going to give us an answer.
And I apologize that it has to be 15 million. So we're asking you to authorize the bonds on a parameters basis, meaning we're not going to go over certain parameters, which means ultimately we're kind of guessing where we're going to sell the bonds and in which year each bond is going to be. And until we actually know that, we have to ask you for a little bit of overage. We don't need overage in every year. We might need it in one specific year, but we won't know until we sell the bonds which year that's going to be. The Local Unit Government Debt Act only says that I have to know before. I can't go over any year, so I have to ask you for an overage in every year, and I might use it in one, but I don't know where that's going to fall until I sell the bonds. The thing here is that we will never be over 9,995,000 because we have to remain bank qualified. So we're asking you to approve up to 15, and that's only to let us figure out when we sell the bonds which years they're all going to fall into. But by and large, it's always going to be $9,905,000. It will not be over 9,995. I can guarantee that. Because I will not go over 10 million.
And that's all I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear you say that, because every dollar above that, of course, we're paying interest on it. So.
No, and the more important thing is you're going to get, the interest rates you'll receive will be lower by 5 to 20 basis points because they're bank qualified.
Under 10. Right.
They'll get a 5-year call because they'll be below 10. All the magic is below 10. They will be below 10. I just need to, I can't tell you exactly, like in 2048, I don't know how many bonds will be there until I sell the bonds. So I have to ask you for a little bit of overage in each year. I probably only will use 1 year, but it won't be over 9,995,000.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, maybe this is a procedural one. What did we just vote on and what are we voting on now? What's the difference?
So right now, you have to, in order to go to bond, you have to approve the parameters ordinance, which is in front of you. So right now, you're authorizing, as we do with any ordinance, essentially the first reading. So you're authorizing bond counsel, who's not here tonight, to advertise the ordinance that you would then take action on to enact on the 18th, I believe is the next meeting.
18th.
The resolution was, I think, more a procedural step. If I have to go back and look at it again. And if Ed knows off the top of his head, he can weigh in. I don't remember exactly.
Essentially, it just allows us to
move forward.
The way bond counsel crafted it was just, it allows us to do all the work and sign anything and do all the other work associated with issuing bonds.
And it approved the engagement of bond counsel and Stiefel to do the work necessary for the selling of the bonds. That's the main purpose of the resolution.
And then the next one, as I see it, is to actually issue the bonds. That's December 18th. So there's a lot of work, there's some work. A lot of it's been done, but there's work to be done until then. So, but the 18th, when we have this public hearing, that's to issue the bonds.
All right, any other questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed?
No.
All right, motion carries. Next, we have a motion to adopt Joint Resolution 2023-23 between Tredyffrin and Easttown Township to approve an intermunicipal fire and EMS services funding, operation, and ownership agreement with the Berwyn Fire Company and the Berwyn Fire Company Volunteer Firefighters Relief Association. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board and public. Before you tonight is, I'll just try to keep this at a high level, a culmination of many years of work, but specifically from October 21, where this board in Easttown and Berwyn Fire engaged to work together to replace 23 Bridge Avenue Station. In the past over 2 years of work, putting this together to have us work cooperatively to actually fund and move forward with that, as well as some operational issues in terms of cooperating with the fire company moving forward and with Easttown Township. Easttown Township has already approved this resolution. I understand Berwyn Fire Company at their membership meeting have agreed to it, waiting for us to be the final piece to sign off tonight. The details of that are all in the resolution. I'm not going to read it all here, but it's a lengthy document. Like I said, it took over 2 years of work, probably longer when you look at everyone's efforts to get here. But it's going to involve sharing the costs for the building with Easttown Township and how we're going to handle some of the other assets of the fire company. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any specific questions you have, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any board comments?
Yeah, I'd like to make a brief comment. This, and Bill said it was the first, maybe the second word he said was culmination. Culmination. This document, if you read it, it's like an overarching document. Or it could be overarching or the foundation. It's the foundation moving forward for emergency services in Tredyffrin Township with the fire companies, and I say companies purposely, moving forward and working together with the 2 townships that are served by our fire companies to assure that our residents receive the highest level of emergency service that we can deliver here and that we can fund. And it's been a long, hard road, and there's a lot of work ahead. But I read this document today quietly, not in a reading a draft or just skimming something. And it's pretty powerful when you read it as what's set out here and what's going to be done with the fire companies and the townships and what we're going to do to provide to our residents the emergency services that they deserve. So I thank everybody who have worked on this. This is big.
Yeah, I'll just add that I'm really happy to be at this point. It is a lot of work to have 2 townships come together to put together an agreement, as well as the fire company. It's been a lot of work by a lot of people, so I'm happy to have this in front of us. Any other board comments or questions?
Yes, Bill, why is this document so lengthy and we needed to get into the minutia of managing finances related to Berwyn Fire? And when all we needed to do was build them a new firehouse, which everyone agreed needed to happen. Why the need for all this additional material in this agreement?
So, I mean, to kind of touch on it, really it's a policy decision. The 2 townships under the fire subcommittee worked hard with the fire company. You're committing a lot of township dollars to fund these stations. There's a number of operational issues we've discussed at other meetings and we've included in our budget. We're now issuing a fire EMS services tax to start covering more of their operations, and with that comes more supervision and scrutiny, depending on how you want to look at it. But I think the fire companies have worked with us on that. They understand, obviously, with more dollars comes more oversight. But really, it's a decision the boards have made in terms of sharing this cost and how they want to move forward in operations, and where those dollars go, so you have the right to have that kind of oversight. But I think it's fair to all the parties involved. We're going to purchase a new fire truck and lease it back to them basically at no cost. So there's advantages for both parties and all parties. So it's a decision that you guys have made and how you want to move forward on that. But it's really a policy decision.
I'm fine with the agreement if, of course, the fire department agrees with it. Again, it's been 2 years since we originally passed a resolution to fund the money for the building of renovate the fire department. I think there's been a lot of back and forth, and I know how difficult it is to work with 2 townships. That's incredibly difficult. However, I think we somewhat lost the big picture of what we need to get done and get it done quickly. But I'm very glad that this is before us and we can get moving forward. So, thank you.
Any other board?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I actually was able to read and actually understood the document, which is surprising. But no, I think that it is a long journey. It has taken us longer to get here than I anticipated, but I think this is the right framework. I agree with what Supervisor Wysocki said, that this is an excellent framework, and it's a step in the right direction. I'm sure there's a lot of hard work ahead, but thank you to everyone involved.
All right, any other board comments, questions, public comments or questions?
Hello, Eamon again. I'm here with Chief Justin Brundage tonight. Just echo a little bit of what's already been said. Obviously, we're very happy to be at this point. Our membership overwhelmingly approved this on the company side as well as on the relief side. Easttown Township approved this document unanimously. Many of the things in this document, especially relates to the financial aspect of this, are things we've already been doing for many years. This is really codifying the fact that we submit willingly audited financials. No one's ever demanded that of us. That's a decision we made as an organization many years ago to pay for that, to have that done, to provide that to you all, based on the fact that you're providing taxpayer dollars, as Manager Martin rightly pointed out. So our membership, the majority of which live in either Tredyffrin or Easttown and pay taxes here, we want the money protected as well. Hopefully all of us, myself and Justin, stay involved for many years, but we hope this document's a foundation that stands the test of time. It will get developed, it will get massaged, things will get added to it, I'm sure. Maybe there's some things get removed, but ultimately our organization is committed to the residents in Tredyffrin and Easttown, and we thank the staff, Bill and Joe specifically, for working hard with us, as well as the supervisors, in particular David Miller, Joel Gassi, and Murph Wysocki. This has been a long road. Mark Freed, who's ending a very long tenure here on the board, was previously involved. We spent a lot of time in the back room with Mark, so thank you for your efforts as well. David, unfortunately, isn't here tonight, but again, we are tired a little bit. It's been a long year, but a productive year, but we're excited that this is coming to a good point that we're going to keep moving forward here. So we really appreciate your support, and we look forward to working with you in 2024. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? All right, hearing none, this one is a roll call vote. Supervisor Holt.
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki.
Aye.
Supervisor Freed.
Aye.
Supervisor Basker.
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to authorize township staff to reclassify 2024 Berwyn Fire Company capital contribution to operating funds. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As we worked through our budget process as well as the fire company's budget process, we came to the realization in the subcommittee meeting that our capital contributions actually needed more for operations, and so it has no effect on the overall budget. It just allows Berwyn to use more of our contributions for their operating needs and instead of capital.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All right, any board comments? Any public comments? All right, hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to approve proposals from Jacobs for Bear Road and Gregory Lane Stormwater Project Engineering Services. Mr. Burgo.
Madam Chair, members of the board, the two proposals, one for Bear Road, that proposal will cover final design fees and construction inspection costs. And the second is for Gregory Lane, which is we're starting up the design work on there. That will be preliminary work and final work, as well as construction inspection cost. There'll be survey and topographical design or survey as included in there as well. One thing that was noted with this, we've already secured over $500,000 in grant funding for both of these projects. As some of that grant funding, which is noted on the memo that I provided, does have a breakdown. Some of this cost for each of these grants, or each of these proposals, will be grant funded. They were included in there, so we have a percentage of that will be able to be included for the grant costs. So the Bear Road the total amount was $168,500, of which $72,500 is identified as township funded. So that's about 43%. Gregory Lane is $270,600 for this proposal, and only $11,927, which is a very small amount, less than 5%, is projected to be township expenditures. If the board has any questions, I can certainly answer them.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-24, approving the 2024 meeting dates and holiday calendar. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. That this resolution is self-explanatory. It's part of our annual year-end work to prepare for the upcoming calendar year. My assistant, Pat Hoffman, has circulated the calendar with the board as well as all the boards and committees, just confirming they're okay with the dates and it meets their expectations. So we've had the proper feedback, and we're hoping to get that approved and advertised for our 2024 meeting dates. Happy to answer any other questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Any questions from the public? All right, this one is a roll call vote. Supervisor Holt?
I move that we begin certain roll call votes at the other end of the dais every once in a while. No, just kidding. Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki?
Aye.
Supervisor Freed?
Aye.
Supervisor Basker?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. And then finally, we have a motion to authorize Roseanne McGrath for a Performance Excellence Program. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. I'm seeking authorization to engage Roseanne to come in and meet with department heads early in January to really help us with the next step of planning for the board and for the future. Roseanne has worked with the township before, most notably, I would say in 2020, right before COVID hit. She actually came in and helped facilitate with the board as well, and so we're looking to do something similar next year. I do have money budgeted in 2024, and one of the things I failed to do was mention that Divot does have a program that would allow us to submit and hopefully reimburse the cost. Her rate's $125 an hour. I would expect us to use, maximum 20 hours. So I think this will be a really good positive for us. I think it was, and we look forward to, having another successful year next year. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any board questions or comments? Any public questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Now we move to new matters, and we'll start with board member new matters. And I just wanted to make a quick announcement that is also posted on our social media and I think our website. regarding trash services. Whitetail Disposal is now accepting new customers in select areas of Tredyffrin Township. It will be necessary to charge a $25 non-refundable delivery fee. A $25 removal fee will be billed upon termination, regardless of reason, for all new Tredyffrin customers. All new Whitetail customers would receive a 1-year price lock. Importantly, new Tredyffrin customers can't sign up online through the Whitetail website, but instead would use a special email set up for Tredyffrin residents, which is tt@whitetaildisposal.com, or by calling them at 610-754-0103 to see if the service is available for your home. So I just wanted to give that announcement because I know there's a lot of questions out there about trash. Any other board new matters? Any citizen new matters tonight?
Bob Ruby, Haley Fire Company. I would be remiss without congratulating the board and the Berwyn Fire Company on behalf of many years of struggles and many years of coming to this point. So on behalf of the Haley Fire Company, good job. We got a lot to go, a lot of work to do. There's going to be a lot of moving pieces, a lot of bouncing balls. The main thing that I wanted to talk tonight about is in July of 2022, I personally entered into an agreement with PennDOT on behalf of Paoli Fire Company, and I secured 7 buildings in Paoli. Bill Martin's aware of it. We had a training opportunity and a contract with PennDOT, which gave us exclusivity and required us to maintain those buildings. We cut the grass, we secured them, we got the looters out, we checked it on a daily basis, and that worked out very well for us. Fast forward to September 23, we returned the keys. It's a double-edged sword. While we were in possession of the keys, if anything happened to those buildings, ultimately came down to literally my name on the contract. So effective September 23, we handed over the keys, relinquished the contract, and a couple meetings back, a young man was here, and I was hoping it was going to be televised tonight, but there's been some technical difficulties, so unfortunately that guy might not be able to hear me tonight, but he was very disappointed in the condition of the buildings. In fact, Supervisor Holt, you were rather frustrated that these buildings couldn't come down sooner. I did not get up during that meeting because of my contact with the contract with PennDOT, but I kept in very close contact with them, and I kind of knew things were happening. And I'm here to tell you, they have torn down the first building, and there will be 6 more buildings torn down starting next week at Paoli Court. So the process is moving. I wanted to make that clear to that young man that was here and was very frustrated. I think been an eyesore. It's been very frustrating for me because we tore the buildings up and made them worse. But at this time, I just wanted to let everybody know that those buildings will be down probably by the first of the year. So it's good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you for the update. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other citizen new matters tonight? All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, everybody.